Hello, in this lesson, you're going to learn how to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. Remember that a rational number is anything that can be written as a fraction. So whole numbers, integers, natural numbers, anything at decimals, anything that can be converted to a fraction is considered a rational number. In a rational number, the fraction bar indicates division. And remember that rational numbers can also be written as decimals that have a pattern, repeat, or terminate. So they're nice, neat, clean decimals. 3/4 can be interpreted as 3 divided by 4, or read as 3/4, like I said it. And we can rewrite this as a decimal by simply dividing. This can be done in your calculator, obviously, but we're going to learn to do it by hand. 3 divided by 4. 4 will not go into 3 because 3 is smaller. So I'm going to add a little decimal here and put a 0. 4 will go into 30 7 times. 28. 7 times 4 is 28. I'm going to run out of room. Let's rewrite this. 3 divided by 4, 0, 7, 28. We're going to subtract that. We have 2. We need another placeholder. Bring it down. 4 goes into 20 and even 5 times. So 3/4 is the same as 0.75. And we can use place value and simplification to convert decimals back to fractions. And I have a little table here to kind of help us relate the place value to converting decimals back to fractions. And I've got the decimal in the center, kind of the center here. And then each place value is, let's see if I can turn this for a second. Let me lock that. There we go. These are ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and so on. It keeps going forever, but for the sake of the lesson, we'll just stop there. And then on the other side, we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and so on. You get the idea, but the difference here is this THS on the end. It means it's a decimal. And you can see it's symmetric on both sides. So we can use that to help us rewrite. So for example, 0.45, what you do is take into consideration how many decimal places there are. This one has 2 decimal places. So if we line it up with our table, 0.45, then this puts us in the hundredths position. And this is 45 100ths. And then you reduce. So we can reduce by 5. We get 9/20. So 9/20ths is 0.45 in fraction form. So the number of decimal places decides which place value you use for your denominator, and then you just reduce or simplify. Now there's a little trick here. A repeating decimal is written over 9s instead of the tens, hundreds, thousandths, and so on. And I have a little proof down here to show why it is that way. If you're interested in that, then you can study that. It's just a simple little example as to why it works the way it works, why it's nines instead of a 10. So feel free to look at that, study it. But for the sake of the lesson, I'm not going to necessarily go into that. I'm just going to show you how to rewrite a repeating decimal as a fraction. We're still going to use place value. So the number that is repeating in this case is just a 3. There might be situations where like 4-5 is repeating, so 0.45454545 and so on. So depending on how many decimals are repeating decides which place value you use. In this case, it's 1 decimal, so you would think, oh, it's 3/10. But since it's repeating, it's actually 3/9. We put it over a 9 instead of a 10 because of the repeating. And then same thing, we're still going to reduce, and we get 1/3. So 0.3 repeated in fraction form is 1/3. And again, there's the little explanation of that, where I got that, where it comes from. There's lots of proofs on YouTube or the internet that you can, like a formal proof that you can look at if you need to. But we're going to move on. This one's really, I like this. This is really easy. Not so much to remember necessarily. If we want to convert a decimal to a percent, all you have to do is take your decimal and multiply it by 100, which is really easy to remember because cent is a root word for centennial, or century, which is 100. So you're just multiplying by 100 to change it to percent. Now, I'm going to show you a little explanation here. If I multiply anything by 100, so 100 times 2 is 200. 100 times 45 is 4,500. And basically what's happening is we're adding 2 zeros on each of these when we multiply. So if I were to multiply 0.03 times 100, I'm shifting a decimal 2 places, and that becomes 3%. And all I did there was 100 times 0.03. That's 003. Move the decimal 2 places, 3%. But the shortcut is to literally just take your decimal and move it twice to the right, and that converts it to percent. Twice to the right, 11.5%. And that's all you have to do. Now, if you're going backwards, if you start with percent and you're going to convert it to a decimal, then we're moving the decimal to the left instead. We go the other way and we divide by 100, which moves our decimal to the left. So 4% as a decimal, 4 has the decimal, it's not written, but it'd be like 4.0. And then we're going to go to the left, 1, 2. We're going to have to put a placeholder there, and that's going to be 0.04 in decimal form. You're going to see this a lot in probability and statistics. If you have to take that course, you're going to be converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. So it's a really good idea to just become very comfortable with this process. Now 58 and 0.4. If you can, pause the video and try these on your own and then come back. 58, the decimal would be at the very end. We move it 2 places, 1, 2. We do not need a placeholder. We get 0.58 in decimal form. Last one, 0.4. It does have a decimal existing. We still move it left, 1, 2. I need placeholders there because there's not numbers, and that becomes 0.004 as a decimal. You might be confused because you're like, it's already a decimal, sorry. It's already a decimal, but this little percent here means that this is written in percent form. And if you're converting it to decimal form, we're dividing by 100, which moves the decimal left 1, 2, left 1, 2, left 1, 2. Now remember, when you start with a decimal and you're moving to percent, we're multiplying by 100. So it goes to the right, 1, 2. And that's how you convert decimals in percents. Super simple. You should be able to do it in your head very quickly, especially if you're using this in other math classes. You don't want to be wasting your time on figuring out how to multiply and divide. You want to be able to quickly just convert it and move on. So as practice, I want you to pause the video, try to fill out this table, come back and check your work. Okay, check your work with the table. I tried to include some work on my table so that if you got something wrong, you could see maybe where you got something wrong. A little trick I want to show you on converting from decimal back to fraction. You can see here that I wrote the little 1000, showing that, that was the thousandths position. And without looking at the little chart I included in the notes, a little quick thing you can do is this has 1, 2, 3 zeros, 1, 2, 3. So that's 1,000. Or down here, this has 1, 2 placeholders. So it's over 100. So that's kind of, if that helps you, use that. If not, don't. But that kind of helps me when I'm writing it back as a fraction to figure out what it needs to go over in the denominator. And then over here we started with percent, and so we had to move it left 1, 2. That gave us our decimal, which gives us our fraction, reduce, and that's it. That's all I have for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'd be happy to help. See you in the next one.